Mr. Speaker, in 2022, more than 100,000 Americans lost their lives due to an overdose. Sadly, nearly 70% of those deaths involved some form of illicit fentanyl. These drugs, which are created in China and then manufactured, compounded in Mexico, and then trafficked across our open southern border, took the lives of enough Americans to fill Beaver Stadium at Penn State University. These deaths are the result of a southern border that has been thrown open to cartels and their operations by a president who refuses to enforce our laws. By inviting mass illegal immigration, President Biden and Secretary Mayorkas have stretched our border resources too thin and allowed the cartels to move their deadly drugs with impunity. It is time to pass a border bill that will fully fund the resources that our Border Patrol agents so desperately need. It is time to return to the Remain in Mexico policy. And it is time to put a stop to the fentanyl poisonings that have taken far too many American lives. Mr. Speaker, last week, during the State of the Union address, the American people saw a campaign speech, not a plan to fix the economy that President Biden's failed policies has left in shambles. In the first 2 years of his disastrous administration, President Biden passed reckless spending bills that sent inflation soaring by 17%. Today, a mother visiting the grocery store would find that the price of juice is up 30%. The cost of beef is up 10%. Vegetables up 5%. And the price of bread up 3%. Ultimately, these costs add up. And over the course of a year, the average American family is paying an additional $11,000 just to afford the basics that they need. Pennsylvanians cannot afford the government red tape and spending that has caused this runaway inflation. Pennsylvanians and all Americans certainly cannot afford the budget that President Biden is proposing, which would only amount to yet another year of runaway spending. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, as crimes continue to surge in cities across the U.S., it has become clear that calls to defund the police and attempts to interfere with law enforcement have put our communities and our families in danger. Across 32 major cities, car thefts have increased by 33%. And here in Washington, D.C., carjackings are up nearly 100%. Sadly, President Biden has ignored this crime wave and has refused to address the victims who now worry about living in their own homes. Surging violent crimes in our cities makes all Americans more vulnerable, and it is time for radical members of this body to finally show their support of police officers. It is time for us to send a clear message that we will always stand with the men and women in blue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield.